Oh, happy Monday. Thank you for enjoying it with the six pack. And we gotta pour one out for these here, the baby Packers, as our friends at 247 Sports have dubbed them the last couple of days. Because they did about everything. Um, they did everything that fans could have asked of them at the beginning of this season. And then some, frankly. Um, but as the season progressed, as October turned to November, as November turned to December, as December turned to January, the the goals of this team seemed to change. The idea of what this team fundamentally could be changed. And that's a good thing. And it means that, frankly, the question of whether or not this Packers season was a success, I think, is more complicated than many have thought it to be. And we need to talk about the game. We need to talk about this uh, yet another infuriating, not infuriating, but loss in the playoffs to the San Francisco 49ers. And we're going to do that today on today's episode of the Scotty Six Pack Podcast. I am your host, Kedrick Stumbris. Thank you for listening on your podcast platform of choice or by joining us watching on YouTube, youtube.com/@Scotty6pack. You can find me on the website formerly known as Twitter at Kedrick Stumbris. Also follow the podcast at Scotty6pack for the latest updates in Wisconsin sports. While you're on this podcast, leave a nice review, 5 stars, kind comments, helps other people find the show and talk about the Green Bay Packers, Milwaukee Bucks. I think we're actually going to do that this week. Wisconsin Badgers, we're definitely doing that this week. Milwaukee Brewers, and sometimes more. So the Green Bay Packers did enough to win. The Green Bay Packers did enough to win on Saturday. But they also did enough to lose. And I think those are in some sense diametrically opposed. And you could say, the Packers didn't do enough to win because they didn't win. For most of this game, the Packers got by doing just enough to win because San Francisco was not doing enough to win, frankly. Wasn't necessarily that the Packers whipped that butt like they did to the Dallas Cowboys a week prior. It was the Packers, in some sense, getting away with some things from what is supposed to be arguably far and away the best team in football. And we'll talk about, that aspect of it toward the end of the show. But when this game started on Saturday, the Green Bay Packers went down and kind of punched the 49ers in the mouth, made it clear that this team was not going to go away easily, and had some penalties. Some things go their way, kind of like the opening drive in Dallas the week prior, but it was different because the penalties this time on this drive, this opening drive, bailed out the 49ers more than bailed out the Packers. Because if you remember, Green Bay goes on that opening drive. Aaron Jones, who we said on this show was key to this game. Aaron Jones has 6 carries for 28 yards to open the game on the opening drive. And that's what you needed from Aaron Jones to make that known early. There's a 3rd and 1. They go to split zone. Loved it. What I said last week that the Packers needed to do in the outside zone runs for Aaron Jones, they got it going. That was huge for the Packers to stay in this game. And Aaron Jones did, taper off a little bit later in the game, but obviously ripped off a big one late. that could have sealed it. You know, they got some shots at the end zone. There's a penalty called, pass interference, defensive pass interference, a good penalty to commit by San Francisco on that opening drive, because otherwise Romeo Doubs is wide open and runs that in for a touchdown, and the Packers are up 7-0. Instead, you get solid coverage, a tough throw that maybe Jordan Love could have placed just a little bit better on third down to the end zone to Doubs, and the drive ends in 3 instead of 6 or 7. But Packers came in, punched that early. You get a Darnell Savage drop pick right away on the ensuing drive. You get a coverage sack on third down as San Francisco gets there. And San Francisco was kind of getting cooked on the front line. The Green Bay Packers brought 4 throughout the night. Did not blitz very often. And we're getting pressure. And part of that is because these defensive backs held up against just a ton of tools that San Francisco has. A ton of weapons that San Francisco has. They get kind of away with it. The Packers kind of get away with a little bit of something, being able to keep all those folks in check. Christian McCaffrey is great on the ground, but not totally a non-factor in the passing game, but not a surefire weapon either. Deebo Samuel goes out for a big chunk of this game. That's tough for the 49ers. Kyle Juszczyk is a non-factor in this game, basically. You don't allow any San Francisco 49er to go over 100 yards receiving. Christian McCaffrey, just a hair, 98 yards. Under 100 yards rushing. Packers kind of did enough. And then the second drive, Green Bay only gives Aaron Jones 2 carries. He had a questionable spot on a tush push. But you just gotta be a little bit better than that. The Green Bay Packers get a tipped field goal, a missed field goal, a huge kick return. Bo Melton gets down the field, the huge DPI in a safety that slips. And these are the kind of things that San Francisco makes little mistakes here and there. San Francisco just isn't quite doing enough. San Francisco is doing enough on the Packers' behalf to give the Packers a chance to win. What I was talking about at the beginning of the show here, where in some ways the Packers did enough to win, frankly, just because San Francisco was not doing enough on their own. Tip field goal, safety slipping, big kickoff return. You had a huge play by Aaron Jones. At the end of the game results in 0 points. 0 points off of a 50-plus yard run by Aaron Jones. And it's really hard. It's really, really tough to lose a game like that where the Packers do not everything right, but do enough for 58 minutes, maybe 57 minutes. It's hard, but when you look at it, the game answered a couple of questions. And one of them is that Aaron Jones, not just in this game, but over the last 5 or so weeks, has proven himself invaluable to this Green Bay Packers offense. And there is a scenario in which the Packers have a really, really hard decision to make with Aaron Jones, and arguably still do. But Aaron Jones, who is kind of the heart and soul of that locker room, the connection, the emotional connection he has with Jayden Reed in particular comes to mind. But running back, older, a lot of tread on the tires. A little bit of a history with injuries. Got a big cap hit next year. 2 months ago, we're not talking about bringing Aaron Jones back. We're saying this sucks, but he's got to go. Now, he ripped off 5 100+ yard games in a row. Something no Green Bay Packer has ever done. And a stat like that. There's not a lot of things. It's not very often you get a Green Bay Packer has never done that stat. It is a long storied organization. It's an old team. It's been around a long time. You don't get a lot of just guys doing it for the first time in impeccable performances. And so to get that out of Aaron Jones at this stage in his career, arguably playing the best ball in his career at that age, what a way that he has proven himself invaluable to that Green Bay Packers team over the last month. And you wish the run he ripped off in the fourth quarter was enough to get it done. You got whatever it was, 6 minutes on the clock, and uh you almost wish instead of ripping off the one long one, you get a several minute drive of Aaron Jones ripping off 4.5 yards at a time. But alas, so be it. And after that run, you get instead nobody picking up free rushers when San Francisco sends 6 and Anders Carlson miss. That just about does it. After that, you get a San Francisco drive for the books of sorts. Because frankly, Brock Purdy didn't play great in this game. And again, we're going to talk about that in just a minute here. But Aaron Jones proved himself invaluable. I think Jordan Love had a little bit of a rough game. We'll talk about that in just a second. But just a sad way. And unless you win the Super Bowl, it's always going to be a sad way to end a fun season. But this feels particularly upsetting just because of how much you were brought to believe. You were brought to believe, and that's what we're going to talk about on the second half of the show here. But first, I need to tell you about our friends over at TickPick. TickPick is where I buy all of my tickets for whatever sporting event, concert, whatever I need to get to. And the best part about TickPick is that they don't believe in hidden fees. They don't believe in charging us service fees, delivery fees. Price you see is the price you're going to get. And they're going to get you the best deal on whatever ticket you need to get to a game. Maybe you want to go to San Francisco to see what is apparently America's team in the Detroit Lions for whatever reason. Cute story. Or you're going to a Bucks game. Bucks play the Cavs at home on Wednesday. That's a great game. Go to TickPick and buy tickets for that. Cavs are arguably the hottest team in the NBA right now. Maybe that's the Suns, but Cavs are right up there too. So that's going to be a great Eastern Conference duel between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Cleveland Cavaliers on Wednesday at Fiserv Forum. So go to TickPick. Download the TickPick app. That's TickPick in the Apple App Store, the Google Play Store. And if you use my link in the podcast description, the one on your screen now in the YouTube description, you're going to save $10 on your first order. And if you find a better deal somewhere else for the same tickets, TickPick's going to refund you 110% of the difference in credit toward your next order. So go to TickPick, click the link in the description. Never pay service or delivery fees ever again. Coming up this week on the show, we're going to talk some Wisconsin basketball going into maybe something of a trap game tomorrow against Minnesota after, a great win over Indiana on Friday night. We recap that and Max Klesmit, who had the second highest scoring run of any power conference player in the last decade. Uh, Crazy. Um, Recap that Friday. Our episode is published Saturday morning. That should be in your feed. Oh yeah, the last episode. We'll talk about that. Could find some time to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. Maybe find a way to break down that Cavaliers matchup on Wednesday, and then take some time to get into the Green Bay Packers. A little bit of season recap, maybe a forward looking piece on a little bit of draft priorities, and then looking at the cap situation a little bit. You know, who's going to go, who's going to stay on this roster, because there's some important questions that needs to be addressed there. But one of the important questions, of course, is the Joe Barry question, which we'll get into at the tail end of the show. Waited to record this until Matt LaFleur had a chance to speak with the media today, which he said some interesting things, some non-committal things, but interesting nonetheless. Because the Packers did enough in certain senses to win, but did enough to lose in others. I posed a question to my followers on Saturday night after the game, which was, aside from the Jordan Love pick at the end of the game, that end of the game, which is bad. And Jordan Love knew it right away. He said that's a cardinal sin of quarterbacking, making a late throw across your body, kind of hurling it up. It's not a great look. But if it's not that, if it's not the play that ended the game, what do you want back? Because Matt LaFleur today in his postgame presser, or sorry, not in his postgame presser, in his Monday presser, said there are about 10 plays that you could say decided the game. And that's about right. So some of these, we referenced the Darnell Savage missed pick at the beginning of the game, that opening drive for San Francisco. And I don't think this is the one that I would pick, because that drive didn't result in points for San Francisco anyway. Green Bay gets 3 points on the drive coming back the other way. And, you know, maybe that getting 6 or 7 instead of the 3 is huge. And there is a world where that results in Darnell Savage running it back, and that results in 7 points, and all of a sudden the Packers are up 10-0, and the 49ers kind of turtle. We talked about the fact that Green Bay couldn't fall down in this game early, and they didn't. But if Green Bay really gets ahead there, that could do a lot for this team. Maybe, but it's not the one that I would pick. There's certainly something to be said for the momentum there, the game script flipping a little bit more, but the Packers were already ahead. I don't necessarily know that Savage definitively runs that back for 6. Another response I got was the Keyshawn dropped interception on top of that. That drive did end in 3 points for San Francisco to open the fourth quarter. Maybe that makes the margin's 3. Margin is 3 in the game. There is 4th and 1 where Packers get a bad spot on that one. Feels like Jordan Love probably made the line to gain on the tush push. They didn't get the best look at it overall. Didn't get the best look on executing the play. San Francisco kind of knew it was coming and did a good job to stop it. But you can't get stuffed on back-to-back plays there. They got stuffed on 3rd and 2 and then 4th and 1. You need to be a little bit better than relying on that spot. You need to get a little bit something better out of that. I think if you're talking, bad luck plays, I don't know that it's necessarily the one that I would pick, just because you had 2 shots. You just didn't get either of them. I think that's just really tough break overall. You obviously have the missed Anders Carlson field goal, and talk about that in a second. But I think the one that I would pick, We talked about how Joe Barry didn't blitz a lot in this game. The Packers did a good job of getting pressure on Brock Purdy with 4 rushers, which is huge. We talked about the fact that Brock Purdy and that 49ers offense is first in the league in DVOA when not getting blitzed and the defense not getting pressure. First in the league in passing offense. Also first in the league in passing offense when not bringing the blitz and not getting pressure. Also first in the league when bringing the blitz and getting pressure, but 13th in the league in DVOA when not bringing the blitz, but yes, getting pressure. When getting pressure with 4, 49ers revert back to a average offense in the air. So you know that. And I get it. You got to blitz on occasion. You got to keep the offense honest, but 49ers first touchdown of the night to George Kittle, where Kittle gets wide open and makes Jonathan Owens look not good at safety for Green Bay. It's one of the very few plays that Joe Barry sent the blitz against Brock Purdy tonight. One of the very few plays that Joe Barry sent the blitz against Brock Purdy on Saturday. And it was absolutely burned. And you kind of saw it happening right away. Packers just don't have the defensive playmakers in the back 6, 7 guys to really do it. And that's the biggest difference between that San Francisco defense and the Packers defense is schematically, they're not all that different. 49ers don't blitz a ton. Joe Barry will send the blitz sometimes, but you look at that front 4 on Saturday, they don't need to do it a whole lot to get pressure. The inside linebackers are the huge difference for San Francisco versus Green Bay. I mean, Devondre Campbell's got a bad case of being old. Some talk about, should the Packers keep him, cut him? What's his salary cap situation? We'll talk about that on that episode, later on this week. But Quay Walker's not great in coverage either. And he's young and spry. He's got to get better in coverage. I think that's the play I'd want back. Like the play call I'd want back. Because you know that defense is not going to be great with the blitz. Brock Purdy got that ball out quickly, and George Kittle got open real quickly. That's what that 49ers offense can do to you with all of those fantastic skill position players. It's really tough. It's a tough outfit to defend. And, eventually you were going to get burned, but I think that's the one I'd want back at that part of the field where you're kind of in like great big play territory for San Francisco. I think that's the one I'd want back. So the Joe Barry question needs a definitive answer, and we didn't get one today from Matt LaFleur. I wasn't necessarily expecting one in his presser today on Monday, but I wouldn't have been surprised to get one way or the other. I personally am expecting Joe Barry to come back because it does not seem that Matt LaFleur wants to get rid of it. He had said that he was, very impressed with the job the defense did on Saturday. And I was there for a little bit. I've come back around on this and said, look, looking at the tape, Brock Purdy made some bad throws in the rain, man. He looked not good. Basically going back and reconfirming my priors that he's not very good. But I think we've seen several data points now on Brock Purdy that he's just a worse quarterback in the rain. I mean, looked bad against Cleveland in the rain, looked awful against the Ravens in the rain. In the rain, he's just not good. Say what you will about small hands. I think it's the same hand size as Mahomes. Some 49ers person said and listened to last week, but whatever. Make hand jokes. I don't care. I think there's just something about him throwing the ball in the rain that is just not his forte. Not his forte. Um, so I was not overly impressed with Joe Barry on Saturday, although it looked like they kept the 49ers in check. But it's always these things when you need the defense to make a stop most. They just don't. It's the Danny DeVito drive in New York where Jordan Love got you a drive and gave you a chance to win. Arguably a game-winning drive by Jordan Love that Joe Barry just threw away because was playing prevent when all the Giants needed for a field goal for the win was field goal. And it felt like they just didn't do enough in the closing minutes of that game to give the Packers a chance to win. When you need a stop most, they just never seem to get one. So the Joe Barry question needs a definitive answer. I don't know when we're going to get one. I think the answer is that he's coming back. But I could see him going just from organizational pressure, from Mark Murphy pressure of you got to do something. He's never had an above average offense, never had an average defense ever in his career. He's just never been good. Maybe they say, it's personnel. This is the scheme I want to run. If you get rid of him, I'm going to run a similar scheme. We just need better defensive personnel. And there's an argument to be had there. I understand that because the safeties aren't very good. You had some weird injury issues in and out of the lineup. Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes basically didn't play this season. I don't know if Eric Stokes actually played at all this season. I think not. Inside linebackers aren't good in coverage. And you look at the defense that the 49ers play, and it's similar and great. And they just have better players, it looks like. I don't know. Then the Anders Carlson question. We talked about the fact that there are maybe 10 plays that decided that game. One of them was the Anders Carlson missed kick. And it's definitely one of them. However, the first or the second field goal, the long snapper gave Anders Carlson an awful, awful, awful snap and still drilled it thanks to some, dramatics, some great holding work by Pat Whelan, and then Anders Carlson slowing up the tempo there to still drill the field goal. Like, there was some weird special team stuff. All night, basically, right? Weird kicks, a miss, big return by Keyshawn. He fumbles forward. Keyshawn's a psycho, man. Colby Wooden tip, miss kick by Anders Carlson. It's weird, but I want to revisit some comments I made right after the Bears game, where Anders Carlson did not have his best night kicking, and then missed an extra point in Dallas too. I want to revisit those remarks here that I'm going to play. Was right talking about this and suggested, what if the Packers brought in Mason Crosby this week, signed him off the Giants practice squad? I don't like that idea. I think it is blurring that line between moving on and not moving on too much. You made a decision, stick to the decision. If it is true that making the playoffs is great and is already above and beyond everything that was hoped for out of this season, everything from now is gravy. Get as much evaluation of Anders Carlson as you can. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And so that is where I think the question we posed at the top of the show comes into play. Was this a successful season or not? Anders Carlson missed the most kicks in the NFL this season. the most. Not great, especially for a guy you spent a draft pick on. You needed him to make a 41, 42 yarder. He also missed an extra point the week before. And so when I had said that I don't like the idea of bringing in Mason Crosby, it was without the context of the Dallas game and the dismantling the Packers gave them. And when the team does that, when the team does what it does for 57, 58 minutes on Saturday night, the expectations change. The goals throughout the season changed, like we talked about at the top of the show. If you just say fast forward from this time last year, you're going to have Jordan Love as your starting quarterback, and you're going to lose in a heartbreaker in the divisional round to San Francisco. You're going to say, well, one, of course we do. But two, it's a great season for first-year starter Jordan Love. You say that, you say goal probably is to sneak into the playoffs. And, that's what the Packers did. Goal in October was, oh gosh, well, let's just hope this doesn't fall off the wheels entirely. Maybe let's start working on these scenarios where Drake May ends up a Green Bay Packer. But then you get back in the playoff picture, you fight your way there, and then not just fight your way there, but whip some butt in the wild card round. You look at that and say, oh, this team might actually be something. And then for 58 minutes on Saturday, that team was something. That team had maybe the best team in football. Maybe your Super Bowl champions on the ropes. You had, I think it was Bosa, fell to his freaking knees at the end of that game. Basically like, oh, there's no 49er fans, not rational ones, taking victory laps on Sunday or Saturday night. They're saying, oh, we almost got taken to task. That was almost over. Saturday night, the expectations changed. I said on this show last week when we talked with Noah Clark over on Snap the Pigskin. Go listen to his show wherever you listen to this one. Said, if this team beats the 49ers, you're not talking me out of this team winning 2 more games. And they did enough. They did enough, but they also did enough to lose. You got all the evaluation of Anders Carlson that you wanted. We said, if it is true that you just want to make the playoffs and then everything from there is gravy, that was it. But after Dallas, everything wasn't just gravy. You had a real shot. The expectations had changed. It wasn't just that everything was gravy. And so I don't want to say that the season was a failure because this is too much. But it sure ended in failure. And that stinks. Matt LaFleur today opened his press conference with someone asked how he's doing. He goes, how am I doing? Well, bad. Yeah, bad. Ugh. And Anders Carlson missed the flipping extra point against Dallas. Why? Bring in somebody. Nobody got brought in all year to push this dude, to push him, to push him in practice. Bring in someone to push him during the week. Anything. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. He's gonna get pushed this offseason. They're gonna do something. It was rough. And I'm not going to say that this season was a failure, despite the fact that the expectations changed Saturday, and it made the ending of that game a failure. Because I was ready. It took me a long time. It took me until the latter half of the fourth quarter, but I was bought in. I was bought in. I went into the game having basically no expectations. Was saying late into the game that it is still waiting for the other shoe to drop from the 49ers, and that other shoe never even dropped. Never dropped. Not really. You're waiting for any kind of explosive play, something where the 49ers are just going to say, we are actually just the better team. And that didn't really happen. And yet, here we are. Well, we had a lot of time to talk about what's going to come next for the Green Bay Packers and what's going to make next season a success. And I think it's going to be doing more than what they did this season. That was great year, and you learned a lot about this team and what this roster has. And we're going to break it all down here on the Scotty Six Pack podcast. Thank you for listening. Wherever you listen to podcasts or watching on YouTube, youtube.com/@Scotty6Pack. While you're there, smash the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave some kind comments, a 5-star review, some good words, helps other people find the show. It's a little bit longer than usual today, but just had to get some emotions off the chest. You know, it felt good. Tomorrow we're gonna break down Wisconsin, Minnesota, going to battle in the barn. Talk a little Bucks this week. Talk a little more Packers fallout. See what happens next for this team. Go Pack, go.